Sure, I got the notification on my phone. All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome to this edition of NASCAR by the Numbers. Got the usual panel on here, myself and NASCAR Opinion.
Yeah, I'm ready for another week, man. Richmond last night, Saturday night, if you want to call it short track racing. I caused a little bit of a stir about that last night. All fun and games, but yeah. And now we're here to kind of just give a little review of Richmond, look at the playoff grid for what we've got right now, and then preview a little bit, not give anything away, but preview the Roval just a little bit.
All right. So, yeah, I mean, it wasn't really that much to talk about, but after Eric Jones DNQ, which we'll get into that, now we got a lot. Now we got something else, some good stuff to talk about. Let's just say, I mean, my pre-layout predictions are kind of all wonky. Then again, it's the Roval. Anything can happen there. But let's just say my predictions are kind of wonky. So we'll get to it. So let's just give a little review of Richmond before we give points.
Yeah, so Richmond, like I said, if you want to call it short track racing, you can call it that. I put that Richmond's not a short track. I mean, by all definition, it's a short track, but it doesn't race like one. It hasn't raced like one for years. Haven't really had a great race there in a while. People a guy tried to come at me and say, well, what about when Carl Edwards bumped Kyle Busch? I mean, Kentucky had a close finish this year, so that doesn't make Kentucky a short track. Just because there was a bump at the finish doesn't make it a short track. I mean, Richmond's had good moments in the past, but it just hadn't ran well late. So every time NASCAR builds up this big highlight reel and this preview of Saturday night under the lights, short track racing, let's get to the race. It's not going to be that fantastic of a race. There's other places we could have a better playoff race at. But, Richmond usually really good crowd, really good racing market. Just the race itself hadn't been great. The package, really the car doesn't help out at all. But, yeah, I mean, other than that, still a few talking points. Mark Truex Jr. goes back-to-back. Have my own thoughts on that. I think he's peaking just a little bit too early. But Truex goes back-to-back. Really big for that team. First time he's ever went back his career. And then we'll get into the Eric Jones situation a little bit later. But prior to really that situation, the biggest storyline night was Ryan Newman. How about Ryan Newman getting his second top five of the season at Richmond?
Oh my God. Like I was watching the race. I was thinking to myself, at first I saw like Newman running like 16, 17. I'm like, okay. And then I don't know, like they were talking like during the broadcast, like, oh, Ryan Newman thinks he has a car to win the race. I'm thinking to myself, what kind of drugs are Ryan Newman taking before the race started? Like, is he taking some Adderall or something? And I just see like he's going by Eric Jones, going by Jimmy, he's going by all these guys. I'm thinking to myself, Newman's in the top five. And I mean, with the Eric Jones DQ, I mean, he finished top five. It's like, what the? I had like this weird feeling like if Newman made it past the round of 16, it wouldn't surprise me. But I was not expecting to run top five at Richmond.
Well, that's the same thing I've had. I mean, I've had a gut feeling. I talked about it a couple of weeks ago when I made playoff predictions. I think common sense and logic wise, I had to eliminate Ryan Newman just because he's in the 16th best car in the playoffs. He is. But I had this gut feeling that this guy could bulldoze his way through to at least the next round. I had a place like Richmond circled as that's where drivers, it doesn't matter the equipment. I mean, it always will matter equipment, but it takes a little bit of that away. If you can get the car handling how you want it, a driver that knows what he's doing, you can have a really good finish. He's been there a million times, and that's what he did. He simply was quiet, picked his way through the field, floated probably around 5th to 8th all night long once he got there. At one point was 3rd and, could have taken a shot for the lead. Never, of course, got there. But Newman was there all night long. That's the ideal kind of race weekend for a guy like Ryan Newman. That's what he's going to have to do to make it through these playoffs. To me, it wasn't a shocker, and it was just fun to watch. And, obviously you don't expect that you make jokes. As I said, is Mark Martin back in the 6, all these kind of things. People give Newman a bunch of crap. Newman's a really good race car driver, and he's taken that 6 car from last year, it being in the gutter, and it was literally, it seemed like a lot of Roush Fenway was a joke last year. The 60 car in Xfinity wrecked every single week. The 6 car ran 22nd, it seemed like every week. From Trevor Bayne and Matt Kenseth couldn't catch a break in that car last year to Ryan Newman, put it in the playoffs. And now, we're going to look at the playoff grid. I don't want to spoil it. People haven't seen it yet. He right now is above the cut line and has a decent little point margin heading into the Roval this coming weekend.
I think this is. I don't know if this sounds real, but I think this is the first time since 2014 where a Roush driver has more than 10 top tens of the season. I mean, Newman's stats. I mean, Newman's stats already have matched Jimmy Johnson's last year's 2 top fives and 11 top tens. I was not expecting. I mean, I think for Newman. I mean, Newman like throughout his entire career seems to be like very under the radar, but Newman like he's going to be like one of those highlights of the season that no one really talks about. I feel like no one's really going to talk about how Newman took that 6 car from running like 25th every week to now he's, making it a round of 12 contender. And if Newman makes it to the round of 12, if he puts performances like he did at Richmond, him making it to the round of 8 isn't completely out of the question. We got Talladega in there. The Fords are always strong at Talladega. Kansas and Dover might be a little iffy, but I mean, hell, I think Newman's got like an A+ for me this season.
The thing you got to think about for the next round, if the 6 car can make it, which I'm almost to the point now where I'm pretty much going to say, if I had to predict the 6 car is going to be in the round of 12, is that Kansas is whatever. Kansas is going to be, they're going to have to be on their game because Kansas, they're going to be holding it wide open. It's 1.5 mile racetrack. It's just kind of hit or miss. The same kind of guys that have been good all year long, they're going to be good. The 6 car, they're going to have to unload with speed, but they're going to have that speed. Talladega, we know anything can happen. Newman's a solid plate racer. He's not a guy that's known for winning a bunch of plate races, but he's a solid plate racer. He knows how to put himself in position. And then you look at Dover. I mean, Dover is another place, not quite as much as Richmond, but they're not going to be holding it wide open at Dover, or at least not for very long. There is a little bit of driver ability that's in there. The driver can control a little bit of it on and off throttle points, braking points, all that kind of thing. That's another track that gives that 6 car another opportunity to not necessarily it's not about the car he's in, but Ryan Newman as a driver could finesse himself into a 7th or 8th place finish, which is, again, setting yourself up. Talladega have to have a good finish. Kansas, all those kind of things. So I would not foresee the 6 car going any further than the round of 12, but people didn't have him transferred out of the first round, and he's going to be looking at a similar situation in the next round.
All right, so yeah, speaking of Ryan, so yeah, like you want to give the point standings now? All right, I got it on the screen right now. So
yeah, go ahead.
All right, so we'll give you the point standings right now. So, like we said before, Ryan, we basically spoiled it. Ryan Newman is above the cut line. So here's what the standings are looking like. This is after the news that broke out this morning that Eric Jones was disqualified. So Martin Truex Jr. is locked in, going back to back for the first time in his career. Kevin Harvick and Kyle Busch, because they're both plus 60 above the cut line, they're also locked in. Hamlin, Keselowski, and Logano plus 50. Well, they're above plus 50. Hamlin's only like 1 point, I think, away from being basically Hamlin, Keselowski, and Logano. You could say they're a lock unless they like literally don't start the race, like John Nemechek did, I believe, at Vegas, I think. So unless something like that happens. Chase Elliott and Kyle Larson, they got a nice little cushion, plus 37 and plus 25. Like we talked about, Ryan Newman, plus 14. Not the greatest spot to live in, but 9th in the standings, plus 14. He's got a nice little buffer going to the Roval, like we mentioned. And then Ryan Blaney, Eric Almirola, and William Byron round out the bottom 3 spots going into the round of 12. Honestly, I'm very impressed with Ryan Blaney. I said that Richmond was going to be like the one that killed him into the round. I really thought that Ryan Blaney would be in the same position, maybe like Clint Boyer and Kurt Busch are right now, which we'll get to in a second. But Ryan Blaney being plus 8 out of Richmond, I think that's a win for that 12 team, considering how horrendous Ryan Blaney is at Richmond. And then Eric Almirola and William Byron, I mean, they've been basically the same like they have after Vegas. And here's the cutoff line, 13th through 16th. Alex Bowman is the first driver on the outside looking in. He is -2. Clint Boyer is -4. Kurt Busch -15. And Eric Jones, who was around where Clint Boyer and Alex Bowman were, like around -4, -5 points. After being disqualified from his 4th place finish last night, he is now 45 points below the cut line. He's in a must-win situation.
Yeah, it's the first thing I looked at this morning on Twitter was, the 20 cars disqualified. I'm thinking, wow, that was random. And that also just put those guys in a huge hole. Part of me can see, you always have to debate. They're not even planning to appeal it. So it's always something when you hear the appeal, is it something that they knew that was wrong and they were just hoping not to get caught with? You don't know, but you kind of think that when a team's like, yeah, we're not going to appeal it, especially when they're not going to appeal it in the playoffs, in the position they're in. So I kind of look at it, is it worth it? Is it worth if they assuming they know they're gambling, they know they're taking a risk, is it worth it? I guess if you finish 6th or 7th and you don't get I can't remember. I think all the playoff cards get teched now, so I guess that really wouldn't even be an argument. I don't understand what you do it for. I mean, I guess you had to have a good run, but now you went from being 4 to 5 points out with a really decent shot to go to the Roval. And if you can put together a solid weekend, have a couple other guys make a mistake, you could go from being in the gutter after Las Vegas to making it to the next round simply by just racing hard. And now you tried to push the limits, you got caught, and now you're 45 points out. You're good, and even a miracle may not be enough because you're going to have to hope for 4 or 5 miracles. And even then that may not be enough. A couple of these guys, if they just simply score some stage points, Jones is pretty much done. I'm not sure what the 20 team was thinking. I guess they tried to roll the dice. Maybe it was something they could get away with, because if they get away with it, if it was something that was, maybe they're not used to NASCAR checking. Maybe it's something that NASCAR had missed in the past. If you get away with it, you're a hero. But now you look like a zero because you just pretty much kicked yourself out of the playoffs, because Eric Jones is not going to go out this coming weekend and he's not going to win the Roval. He's not a road course guy. He's not that kind of driver. It's not going to happen. So Eric Jones is out of the playoffs because of this mistake.
Yeah, this actually another interesting stat. This is the first time this season that we've seen in the Cup Series a disqualification. We've never seen in the Cup Series before. And Eric Jones, I was not expected to be the 20 teams to be that team to do it. And like you said, I mean, the Roval is such a wild card. So for all we know, Eric Jones could come out and basically deal with Ryan Blaney. The thing about Ryan, if Jones is he has to win the Roval. I mean, it's no question about it. But even then, I don't think you can count on what Ryan Blaney did last year, because Ryan Blaney, he was above the cut line, I believe, but he was running top 5 the entire race. Jones, I don't see him running top 5 the entire race. I'll be surprised if he even runs top 10 the entire race, in all honesty. I think the only road course he's really decent at is Watkins Glen. And that's the only road course I can really think of. So,
yeah, I mean, he's just not known as a road course guy. This is really the most pressure he's faced as a driver, at least in terms of points. Obviously, you could argue earlier this year, battling for his contract and all that stuff. You could say that, but Eric Jones has got to go with the Roval, and he's pretty much in a must-win situation. And I just don't know if he is ready to handle that situation, especially at a place like the Roval. There's going to be a lot of stuff out of his control, and he's just not that kind of guy. This would be different if we were talking about, a Kyle Busch, a Brad Keselowski, guys that have ran well at road courses, that, a Kevin Harvick, even a guy who's maybe not the most road course savvy guy, but he's won road course races and he can finesse his way up to the front. I don't think Eric Jones is that kind of guy. But getting off the Jones thing and just looking at the playoff grid, I mean, like you just read off the points, just a couple of things to point out. Let me tell you one good thing. If I had to predict, I'm putting Ryan Newman into the next round. If Ryan Newman was sitting maybe 11th or 12th, I'd say, even with the same kind of point gap, and I understand you're going to say, what are you talking about? The same point gap? If it's the same point gap, he should be just as nervous if he was 12th or if he was 9th. With how tight these points are, Newman really only needs to beat 2 or 3 of these guys, and he's going to be fine. We're naturally going to have 1 or 2 of these guys, maybe even 3 or 4 struggle next week, because out of 16 guys, not all of them are playoff guys. Somebody's going to make a mistake somewhere. Something is going to happen some point during the race, or someone's going to make a mistake on pit road, mistake on track, get off track. And again, some of these guys just aren't very good at road courses. But listen to the names that are in this mix: Newman, Blaney, Almirola, Byron, Bowman, Boyer, Busch, Jones. There's a lot of B's in there. I didn't realize that. But, if it was Newman, if Newman was down there 11th or 12th, I feel a little concerned, because you're going to say some of this, 1 or 2 of these guys below the cut's going to outrace him, right? At this point, all Newman has to do is make sure all 7 of these drivers don't just sit there and put on a clinic at him. He's got a solid points gap, and he's better than most of these guys. Just barring equipment, I know Newman's good enough to finish ahead of Almirola. He's good enough to finish above. Byron is not a road course driver at all. Bowman's the same way. Bowman had a solid showing, and he might run 9th, 10th, 11th, but Bowman's not going to get up there and try to win. Boyer and Kurt Busch are kind of the guys to me that you maybe watch out for, just because they've got a lot of experience. I think if anybody below the cut could actually race their way up, I think it would be Clint Boyer, just because that team has done an okay job getting stage points at times. Obviously, last week at Las Vegas, they completely blew it. Didn't get any stage points after starting on the pole. But, you look at, the guys Newman's beating, I think he's already beating those guys in lesser equipment. All he's got to do is just stay clean next week, and he's going to move forward.
Yeah, I took a look at Ryan Newman's stats where you were mentioning that. He finished 7th at Sonoma, and he finished 25th at Watkins Glen. And let me just give a little review on. I'm going to talk a little bit about 8th through 15th. 8th through 15th. We've already established Newman being, he's seemed like I said, he's like the finesser driver. He's basically what I thought Jones was going to be in the round of 8. He's going to finesse his way into the round of 8. And right now, that's what Newman is doing right now, going into the round of 12. But let me talk about Ryan Blaney, last year's winner at the Roval. I think Blaney's probably going to be Newman's biggest threat, because Blaney, like I said, he won stage 2 last year at the Roval, and he led a lot of laps, and he obviously won the race. He was running top 5. Almirola, he was really a non-factor. Byron was a non-factor. Bowman, I think he finished 3rd, but I think he was a non-factor for the win most of the race. Boyer was really a non-factor. Kurt Busch actually did start on pole for the inaugural Roval race, so watch out for Kurt Busch to make a good qualifying effort, I will say. And we already established Eric Jones in a must-win situation. Let's talk about the drivers who we think are going to be the ones in the playoffs, ones going to be the ones to watch, and the drivers who we think are going to lag behind. So,
if I'm looking at it, if we're not looking at any kind of points, we're throwing points as drivers to watch, you've got to look out for the guys that ran well last year. Look at Martin Truex Jr. He almost won the darn thing until Jimmy Johnson just barrel rolled into the final corner, which I was there in person, and it was absolutely nuts. Probably the most wild finish I've ever seen in person. Kyle Busch, he's going to be up there. Brad Keselowski, if he can figure out that you need to brake going into turn 1, which was sitting right when that accident happened last year, and it was completely wild. But kind of outside of the obvious, I think Logano, you kind of throw in the obvious. So here's what I'm going to challenge me and you both. Outside of the obvious, outside of the top 6 in points, that's what I want us to choose from. So we can't talk about anybody that's in the top 6 because they're kind of obvious. We know no matter where we go, Truex, Harvick, Busch, Keselowski, Hamlin, and Logano are going to be good. They're pretty much good everywhere. So the guys 7th and lower in the playoffs, I think you have to I don't know why, but I have this weird feeling that Clint Boyer is going to get a couple of stage points. And I think now something may happen to him in the 3rd stage, but I think Clint Boyer and that team, they don't have to win to train. I mean, they're only 4 points out. They don't have to win. They just need to beat a handful of guys. And if they can do that, I think Boyer can get a solid 7th, 8th place finish. I think he's one to watch. I think that 14 team is good enough, no matter how rough it's been the last month or so or whatever, couple of months, that team can put together at least a solid enough performance to make it to the playoffs. You say Kurt Busch, but Kurt Busch is still 14 points out. If they get stage points, they're obviously going to change all their hope. They're going to put themselves in a really good spot. But I just don't know. Obviously, they're nowhere near a must-win. It's only 14 points. But can the one car still be good enough to outlast, these 5 or 6 other drivers that they put themselves in front of? So as drivers to watch, really Boyer, and drivers to worry about, I'm putting Almirola and Byron on a watch list because Almirola has not picked up the pace in the playoffs. As proud as I was of Byron, now Byron and the 24 team impressed me at Vegas. They got stage points in both stages. Came back, had a top 10 finish after a spin. But last night, I almost forgot that William Byron was in the race, besides when they were talking about him going a second lap down. He's not a road course guy. I don't care how good Chad Knaus is. If you're not a road course driver, you can't just flip that switch overnight. Those 2 guys need to be worried headed into the Roval.
All right, so here's mine. So for the first one, I got Kyle Larson. And a lot of things people don't forget is that Kyle Larson led the most laps at the Roval last year. He led the most. I think he led 60 or 70 some laps. He won stage 1. And I mean, if Brad Keselowski didn't kamikaze him and Kyle Larson probably would have won that race, in all honesty. So that's the first guy that I got watching heading into the Roval. Ryan Blaney, like I said, won stage 2 in the race, won the race overall. Obviously, he was running third during the time. And like I said, he ran top 5 the entire race all day long. So we really only have one race to go through when it comes to, like the Roval. Because you could obviously put in like road course experience stuff, but then again, the Roval's so different from other road courses. So I got Ryan Blaney as another one to watch either. And then the other one I got is Kurt Busch. I don't know why. I have a gut feeling that Kurt Busch, he's just going to do what he has. I feel like Kurt Busch is going to win stage points. Like I said, he won the pole last year for the Roval, so I think he's going to have a great qualifying effort, which can equate to many points in stage 1. Because like one of the reasons why I said that when a couple months ago when Eric Jones was sitting 18th of points where Jimmy Johnson is right now, I don't want to talk about it. But when Eric Jones was running, like 18th of points, I said the reason he's still in that points because he was doing horrible in qualifying. And so if you do horrible in qualifying with this new aero package, you don't gain points at stage 1, and that's crucial, or even stage 2. So I think Kurt Busch, he's going to have a good qualifying effort. I think he'll qualify top 5, and I don't want to say he's going to get the pole, but I think he's going to qualify top 5 and get some stage points and stage 1 and potentially stage 2. So that's why I think that Kurt Busch is going to be – he's 14 or 15 points out. I don't remember exactly, but I think that he'll be in a pretty decent shot. And like I said, the ones I think they're going to have to worry, I'm not going to say Eric Jones because that's obvious. Eric Almirola, he's been non-existent. I kind of have this little scuffle on Twitter where it's like, everyone's like dogging on Clint Boyer for doing bad, for like being basically like old and irrelevant. Eric Almirola, in my opinion, has done worse this season. I mean, he only has one top 5 in the season. That's in Phoenix all the way.
What you were hitting on, people were, Almirola had this little kind of mini run at the end of last year, and people were building him up like he was going to be a championship guy. And I'm thinking, what have you seen to make you think he's going to be a championship kind of guy? He's never been that guy. He's never going to be that guy. He's in Stewart-Haas equipment and still hadn't showed signs of being that guy. And just like you're talking about, people are dogging on Clint Boyer and he needs to lose his ride and this needs to happen here. What has Almirola done that's any different? He started out the season fairly solid, good chunk of top 10s, but since then he is declined. He has dropped off. And that's why I'm pretty much going to – if I had to predict, he's probably going to fall out of the playoffs. Because they just haven't picked it up. They haven't picked up the pace, which is kind of watching in a mirror. Ironically, they're in the same spot they're probably going to be in last year. Remember the last 3 or 4 laps of last year, and the camera's following Almirola, and he's doing everything he can to pick up any kind of point here, and he dogs his way to the next round. But the 10 team, I'm with you on that 100%. I don't get it. I don't understand the Almirola's a great guy. I don't understand the love and to think that he's going to be a championship kind of guy because he's just not that guy.
Yeah. Back to what I was saying. 10 top 10s and 1 top 5. Hadn't had a top 5 since Phoenix earlier in the year where he finished 4th. Hadn't had a top 10 since the July Daytona race where Justin Haley won. And Clint Boyer, 6 top 5s and 13 top 10s. One guy told me on Twitter, it's like, oh, Eric Almirola, his average finish is 1 spot better than Boyer's. Almirola's is like 14th, Boyer's is 15th. It's like, wow, such a difference. But yeah, but I'm backtracking when I say like Almirola, he's the main guy besides Eric Jones that I'm worried about. And another guy I'm worried about is another Hendrick guy, Alex Bowman. Obviously, cause it seems like ever since his Richmond win, Alex Bowman has just been falling down. We talked about William Byron, running like 28th last night. Alex Bowman, he wasn't doing that much better either. He was like running in the mid-20s as well. And I said it before, like if Alex Bowman wanted a shot to make it to the second round, he's gonna have to finish like top 5 or maybe even win Las Vegas, in my opinion. He didn't do that. He finished 6th, and then come Richmond, he's non-existent. And like I said before, he's the only playoff driver with only single-digit top 10s. And he did finish 3rd here last year, but then again, last year's race was so chaotic that you can't really take that into account. You got to take account where they were running at the time. And I didn't really see Bowman running that well at the time. So Bowman, he's another driver that I think he's going to have to worry. I know he's only like 2 points out, but I don't see him overcoming that, honestly.
Yeah, and that's one thing, kind of just looking forward is we've only had one race here, and this year is still a lot different than last year. Last year, they didn't have any notes. Now you at least have a year full of notes, certain things that are going to happen. What we saw going into turn 1 last year with Brad Keselowski and Hatfield locking up, I don't necessarily know if we see that again. That happens, the drivers learn. Got to remember, the interloop on the backstretch is completely different now. It's an actual interloop. That's going to play a role in all of this thing. This aero deal, I can't remember. I don't think that was on any kind of the car last year. So this could contribute to some things. I mean, there are a variety of things that are completely different about this year's race compared to last year's. And to me, that's one of the beauties of this coming weekend. I'm so excited. I'm shocked I'm actually not going. I was going to go. I'm decided I'm going to just stay home this year. It's been I can't tell you the last time it's been a Charlotte race that I haven't been. Probably 2 or 3 years ago that I haven't been to the Charlotte Motor Speedway for the race. But I'm excited about it. And I mean, Bowman, it's weird. He's only 2 points out. He's probably going to have to beat his teammate to make it, unless somebody else has an issue like a Blaney or a Larson. Here's the thing: is guys that I'm fairly confident probably aren't going to make it. Eric Jones, he's probably not going to make it. If I had to predict, Almirola's probably not going to make the cut. I don't know why I'm having a weird feeling about Kurt Busch. Kurt Busch has every ounce of talent to make up every single one of these points. It's only 14 points back, but for some reason, I just have this weird gut feeling that something's going to hold that one car back from transferring, and he's going to be kind of that one guy that nobody had out this early and is out this early. But that fourth spot, I really don't know. I've told you I have that weird feeling that Boyer's going to gain some points. But between between Byron and Bowman, somebody's going to have to go, in my opinion. Which, if you remember, I predicted both Hendrick drivers being out. That'd be wild if that ended up happening. But I'm with you. I mean, and I said this is, I think, the hardest first round there's ever been to predict, because this is really the most authentic playoff field we've had. There's no, rain-shortened winners that made it. It would have obviously been the case if Justin Haley would have somehow been, qualified for the playoffs.
Justin Haley, 2020 champion.
Exactly. This has been the best playoff field we've had under this format because there's no lucky winners and rain-shortened races, all this kind of stuff. It's been straight up. These are the guys that either won or pointed their way in, and most of the guys that won would have still pointed their way in pretty much. I don't think there's any winners that you're thinking they wouldn't have made the playoffs through points. So that's what's made this year really, really exciting, and it's going to make it exciting this weekend. I think this weekend is going to be a huge deal. The Xfinity race is going to be good, I'm sure. I wish if NASCAR would just use common sense and start the playoffs all at the same time, we could have both of these races this weekend be cutoff races. And imagine the madness it would be for the Xfinity Series if it was a cutoff race. But I'd we'll save that for another day.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I don't know why NASCAR. I don't understand why Michigan, going up top, I don't know why Michigan, it's a cutoff race for the trucks. Las Vegas is the cutoff race for Xfinity. And Indianapolis is the cutoff race for Cup. I don't really know if that makes any sense, but that's just my opinion.
Yep.
Yeah, I think the ones I think are out are going to be Almirola, because like you said, he has no momentum. Like at least last year, it seemed like he had somewhat of a shot, but he's just been. If your name isn't Kevin Harvick, and at times Clint, there's times I still think that Almirola is the worst car, the worst this driver in SHR, because Boyer's had moments, even Suarez has had some moments. Almirola, I haven't seen that one moment this year where you can say, hey. That was Eric Almirola. You could say about Suarez, Suarez winning the pole in Kentucky, or Clint Boyer having his run out of Richmond earlier in the season, and obviously Kevin Harvick winning 3 races. But I can't name a time of the season where I think, oh, hey, Eric Almirola did something. He's kind of just there. He's kind of just been 14th the entire season, even though he's 11th at points right now. So I got Eric Almirola out. I got Alex Bowman out. And I don't see Eric Jones win the role either, so I have him out. The fourth guy I have out, I'm debating between either Byron or Kurt Busch, but I'm leaning more towards William Byron simply for the fact that, like I said, I think Kurt Busch, he's going to finesse his way into the second round. And Byron, like you said, Byron is not a road course racer. So unless Chad Canal really gives him the T-Rex car that Everham gave Jeff Gordon, that all-star race, I don't see Byron, he might run 15th, but I don't think it's going to be good enough.
Yep, I agree. And that is that's all I got for this week. What else you got?
Yeah, I got nothing else either. The IndyCar finale still going on. I have no idea who's winning. Hopefully it's Colton Herta, because I picked him to win.
I didn't even make a pick, but I'm still somehow in the top 3 or 4 in the standings.
You're tough. You're 5th. I think you're almost out of it.
Next year, when we split this up by series, I'll go ahead and take my NASCAR championship.
Yeah, I mean, I remember I think it was for Spa. I actually gave you Charles Leclerc to win, and you count that on. So I'm okay, that's not bad. And then he still wins the winner. I don't know what kind of glass ball you have, but I want it. I'll pay top dollar for it.
Yep. Well, cool. I'm excited. Oh, and before we get out of here, remember, I think, folks, obviously this week was different because the race is on Saturday night. I believe that's the last Saturday night race of the year. I believe we're on Sundays the rest of the year. I know we're going to try to do next week's episode, I believe at 11 a.m. on Sunday. So 11 a.m. gives you a little bit of time. We don't want to put it at football time. So, 11 a.m., 30, 40 minutes, we'll be previewing the Roval, giving some predictions, reminding you of what the grid's looking like. Who knows? Maybe something happens during the week that changes the game. Maybe, one day you're thinking something, next week you got a different feeling. So next Sunday at 11 a.m., we'll be back here for the third episode of NASCAR by the Numbers. And I'm telling you, I'm already excited for next weekend's race. And I'm ready to get it rolling.
All right, yep, same here. Thank you guys for tuning in to this edition of NASCAR by the Numbers. Make sure to tune into tomorrow's episode of the Below the Yellow Line podcast, where we'll give, not only Richmond, but we'll talk about the Formula One race, we'll talk about the IndyCar race, everything about motorsports. So make sure to tune in 6:30, 7:30. We haven't really figured out exactly what time we're going to do it. Somewhere around the 6 to 7:30 time, somewhere around there. But thank you guys so much for tuning in to this edition of NASCAR by the Numbers, and we'll see you next week.
See ya.